What's going on, Workforce? Brian here, and today we get to talk more about the Viera and obviously the dancer in this case. So we're going to dive into your comments, what you guys are saying about this, both positive and negative. There's a lot of debate going on within the community right now, and we're not going to address some of the real heavy reactionary stuff, but what I do want to talk about is the concept of acceptance, the acceptance graph. We're going to toss that up on screen if you guys haven't seen that. A lot of people are pretty much maybe right here when it comes down to where they are in terms of taking in the news, because there is no male Viera, there is no healer job for this expansion for Shadowbringers, and there's a lot of people who also maybe are hoping that they still could do that. They still could have some kind of surprise announcement. And I'm not going to say that can't happen. I mean, I think one of the things that is really exciting about the news, about just Shadowbringers, is they can do anything they want. They showed us they can really do anything they want. We got Blue Mage in January. They could easily put another job sometime in the course of this expansion. However, I would advise that if they do put a job and it is a healer, my guess would be Chemist, and my guess would be as a part of the limited job system. So anything that comes outside of the expansion, drop, we might see that more in the limited system than anything else due to the time and nature. I don't know, maybe it takes more time, but regardless, that would be my expectation that I would try to set. So before we get started, I do want to shout out Tifoy, Syntech, and Super Vegito for joining the workforce. These are new workforce members, so give them some love and some shout outs in the chat below. We'd love to hear from you. Guys, if you want to be a part of the workforce just like these three, just hit that sub button. If you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. We love to see you. We love to hear from you. So let's keep that conversation going. But without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into your comments. And first up is Vox. Vox writes, when you said no male Viera because of lore reasons, I insta disliked and I stopped watching. GG. Well, Vox, thank you so much for the comment. I really do actually appreciate it when people dislike a video. Sometimes you don't ever really equate like why they might have disliked the video. In this case, it just sounds like you're disliking the video because you disagree for some reason or whatsoever. So your dislike is, I guess, I can't forward it on to the dev team because they're the ones who are saying that it's because of the lore. And that's essentially what it is. So for people who are in the boat that they could fix the lore to do this, yes, we are in complete agreement. They could completely redo the lore. They could redo anything they want because they're building the game. And so saying, me telling you that it's because of the lore that they're doing this is me just passing along the information that's what Yoshi P and the development team said. So I don't know, there's a part of me that wonders why you stop watching and instant dislike, because it doesn't make sense to me. It seems like you're probably somewhere on that in the anger part of the acceptance curve, but I could be wrong. And I'm not meaning this as any disrespect. I actually do really appreciate you leaving this comment because I think it's important to have that conversation. I don't know if you're watching this follow-up at some point, but if you'd like to clarify, I'd love to hear from you. You can always also, of course, check out our Discord if you want to have a quicker conversation as opposed to just a comment one. Links in the description below for that. But Vox, it is the lore. Like, everybody who says they can fix it is right. But as it is right now, as it is going to be at launch, as it is probably going to be during the Shadowbringers thing. It's not to say they can't change it. It's not to say that some event cannot fix this. It's not to say that it's a part of the game's story. And hear me out on this, guys. When they talk about what has been done has to be undone. When we talk about that, obviously the theme of time travel comes in. Like, how can we undo it? Are we talking about one specific calamity or even the Sundering to begin with? And because all these worlds kind of grew up in their own different way, right? All these shards grew up in their own different way. I highly suspect that it could easily be a lore reason, but a temporary lore reason, right? So just because we're not getting it today doesn't mean we're not going to get it tomorrow. And by tomorrow, I mean, there's going to be many more expansions to this game. I mean, so imagine if we actually undo the Sundering, if we undo that, where all of these worlds either get meshed back together, we have a whole different history, a whole different world to explore. Who's to say we can't have that then, because then that kind of fits into that. And so we see measurable change with the game and the world. Not change just because we think like we force them to do it, but that's a part of their plan. Now, that's neither here nor there. We don't know the mind of Yoshi P. Yoshi P knows his own mind. So for me, it's actually not that big of a deal. Now, I know that there are people who had that expectation, and if they were part of the workforce and they've seen other videos, my hope was to help kind of temper that expectation. So regardless of that, like, you know, I wish you luck in that case if you're upset with me because the devs decided not to do what you want. Like, I don't know what you wanted. So, but I do wish you the best. Thank you so much for the comment. And let's go ahead and dive in to Carlos Spots. So Carlos writes, the first thing on my list this expansion was to change my race to a male Viera. I pretty much only play as a healer. With that said, I must admit that these announcements left me very disappointed. It's a shame. I'm a huge Final Fantasy XIV fan, and I've rarely been disappointed with this game. But it's a double whammy. It's really making me go into Shadowbringers with a sour taste in my mouth. Hopefully there'll be some big surprise announcements before the expansion to quote-unquote fix this. But I don't really think that's going to be the case. And Carlos, don't think that. Like, you know, don't think that that's going to happen. So you say you really don't think that's the case. That's the best way you could have answered that comment, because could it happen? Yeah, they could have some surprise announcements. They could announce something today. They could always announce something next week. Something in the story could happen, etc. But my concern is, my real concern here is that if you expect that to happen, people who expected male Viera are either disappointed or at least going like, well, bummer, you know. So you're going to fall into that category. If you didn't expect that, then maybe it didn't have a bigger impact on you or whatnot. But regardless of that, don't expect it, and that way if it happens, it will be exciting. And that's not to say you shouldn't ask for it. And I'm definitely saying if you want it, you should raise your voices up to the devs. Go to the official forums, raise your voices, be heard in that case, because you have that right. Like there's no one here saying that you shouldn't express yourself and you shouldn't feel disappointed in what you did not get, right? The goal is obviously Yoshi P wants to make the game for all of us. And as we've grown and as our community has grown and as the game has continued to grow, it's obviously brought in more people with varying and different backgrounds and different ideas of what direction they want to go to game in. And that's going to obviously create some friction. The goal is that it shouldn't tear us apart. It should unite us in these different ideas that we might not have expected or what have you, and something that can challenge us and may hopefully bring us some form of delight and within this adventure. So, but let's also temper that with like just the reality of dev time and development, etc. So setting expectations for the next expansion, I think that's reasonable. We need to make sure we communicate those and also kind of ground those in reality, because the worst case scenarios, we end up really hurting ourselves, really shocking our system. And thus just the only way we can respond is with that frustration or that anger, where the only people who communicated that was to ourselves, and we never shared that with the devs, and the devs never then got that feedback and never got that communication. So I would encourage people to communicate. I'd also encourage people on both sides not to shoot down the requests, not to go in and say, no, like, don't shoot them down. Let every voice be heard, and let's not try to stifle the conversation. Because if, let's say, the majority of people want male Viera and a vocal minority don't, well, the vocal minority shouldn't try to bully the majority into being quiet in that case. But regardless of that, yeah, let's not expect, and if they do delight us, if they do surprise us, then that's great. But if they don't, and we expected them to, we're only setting them up for failure. We're only making it harder for them to do what they love to do and what we enjoy, and what this kind of back and forth goes on. So best advice you have kind of is at the end of your sentence, but I am sorry that you are disappointed. Again, there's 2 years between expansions. A lot can happen. We already see that they can do things in the middle of expansions. We already see when they say they're not going to do something that they can easily change that up. So they want to surprise us. They want to delight us. It's our job to communicate it and also to do it respectfully. So any kind of I think people, maybe it might be best to kind of take like a week at least. Let yourself kind of work through kind of the acceptance curve process to kind of get a good understanding, and then like as a community articulate in the best words possible like what we want to see, where we want to see the game go, what our hopes are for it, etc. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you, Carlos, for sharing yours. So then Zane writes, seriously people, y'all need to chill. Final Fantasy XI had gender lock, so why should 14 be any different? And so what healers don't get is another scholar, white mage, astrologian that ain't good enough. Feel people are ungrateful for what they give us. God, I hate whiny people. And here's where, like, Final Fantasy 11 had gender lock races. 14, they could do whatever they want. And in this case, they decided to introduce gender lock races. That, in my mind, I don't see a problem with, and especially because we got 2 races. We got a lot of diversity there. A lot. As opposed to just, here's like a bunny male version and a bunny female version, or here's a lion male, lion female. We kind of got a lot more diversity, and kind of also see my earlier comment to Vox regarding, like, who knows when we talk about the lore, like if there's a greater arcing story here, right? But the thing that I would like and would want to advise, caution is that we shouldn't like worry that people are upset. Like, people are naturally going to be frustrated who wanted this. I could easily be that person who's upset that they didn't get what they want. Zane could easily be that person that might be upset that they didn't get what they want. Now, Zane, it seems like his expectations are set or grounded. They're excited about whatever the devs decide to do with this game. That can be positive and negative too, right? Because it's at some point, like, there you could have kind of like, you could get out of that honeymoon phase. If we were going to relate 14 to kind of a relationship, you can have that honeymoon phase where they can't do anything wrong, and then all of a sudden the glass shatters and you're like, wait a minute, what's happening? So that's the concern that I kind of balance in with Zane's comment. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but what I'm kind of referring to is that we shouldn't hate somebody who's not happy with what happened, right? I like to try to practice empathy. I like to put myself in their position. I like to sit here and say, okay, well, how do we go about doing this in the right positive way, etc. Because if we can achieve understanding, maybe we can help them work through kind of the acceptance curve quicker, so they can get out of the anger phase and the disappointment phase, and then be like, okay, having kind of that internal freedom, that peace of mind, that joy, that is what we're getting, because we don't need any of this. We don't really deserve any of this. Like, none of this even needs to exist in the first place, but yet it does, and we get to take part in it, and we get to experience it, and they get to experience it, and they get to also take care of their families. There's so many really good things to be said about the whole process. So anyway, regardless of that, I think it's fine. Like, and we definitely agree, because it's like, yeah, 11 had it, not a big deal. 14 had it before, 14 has it again. Okay, that's not to say it won't change, and that's the whole point I'm trying to get at. We shouldn't hate each other, I think, and I know that you're not, saying you actively like hate, in this case, but it can't. I would say probably it's just a hard word for annoying. Like, it can feel annoying, it's like, and I get that. Like, it's like we want people to be excited and to share maybe the joy that we have. I wish everybody was excited as I was after last night. But that's not the reality of the situation. And so again, I try to practice empathy. I want to make sure that, like, yeah, I could easily be in that. They could have introduced the male Viera, and I could be like, man, what a waste, what a waste of time and resources. But that's just where my perspective is, and that's the point of view that I'm coming from. Well, it's not more right or more wrong than anybody else's, and that's the point of opinion and discussion. So thank you, Zane, for the comment. I really appreciate it. Guys, Zane does do some content creation regarding crafting and gathering and all kinds of little stuff on his channel. Be sure to check him out. I'll include a link to his channel in the description below if you want to go watch his content. He records it from the PlayStation 4, unless I'm mistaken, and he's gotten a new rig in the last couple of weeks. So anyway, check him out, and thank you, Zane, for the comment. So Hip Indeed writes, I really don't mind Dancer's position. Technically speaking, their ranged physical DPS role is the least represented, with just 2 members. And it makes a lot of sense to have that kind of match in with what Bard is. But yet, a lack of a new healer is weird. Is there a possibility that it'll be revealed even later before launch, or around launch itself? Maybe it's something complex that will come into the Shadowbringers patch. So let's hope so. Also, the Hrothgar feel very unnecessary since we already have a cat race. But deep down, I kind of like them since they're obviously based on the Ronso, bringing more Final Fantasy series love to the game. And even if I rather have Barmecus or a Final Fantasy Tactics advanced style Moogles, but maybe someday. And so Hip, yes, Moogles I would like. It's like I've always wished we could play as a Moogle in these online games, and that usually is pretty much traditionally dashed. But I'm going to talk about kind of what you're pointing out with the Ronso here. And you're right. Like, I like that concept. I like the tie-in with the general Final Fantasy, bringing in other Final Fantasy games into this. Because 14 was so originally based off 11, that's just kind of the world we live in. And that's one of the things that's so exciting about the shards, and the fact that the first, and they have somewhat names. It makes me excited to learn more about the second and the third and the fourth. Yeah, several have been, because every time we lose a shard when there's a calamity, anytime the source experiences a calamity, Hydaelyn has to, basically take in a shard. And so that's happened 7 times. So out of the 14, or I guess the 13 shard, however they decided to do the math, because the 13th we know was absorbed into the void, we know we've lost other shards, and those are completely obliterated. So there are other shards, and my hope is that we have some kind of 11 tie-in as well. That would be so cool and so interesting to see what they decide to do with it. Obviously, we've got a couple of years till the 2020, the 20th anniversary of Final Fantasy XI. Maybe that makes sense to do that kind of tie-in around 6.0 or 7.0. Who knows, because they were joking about going to the moon in 7.0. But regardless of what you say, I think when we talk about what was really truly missing as far as the jobs go, and that's really what they attack. They don't look at a job and try to make it fit into something. They look at what's missing and what I think they can add in. And being a ranged DPS, they can, obviously, only 2 currently. They can bring in a third, and that trinity of 3 ends up, I think, being a game developer's ideal balance. Give each one a strength and each one a weakness, and so that way you can have Machinist that's strong in A, Bard strong in B, and then Dancer strong in C. And then each one has kind of here's where they go. So I honestly where, we talk about Bard having the support mechanics. Remember, TP's going away. So what do we do? How are we going to make that change? And I think the real underlying thing that everybody does not know, and we won't know until May, until the 3.5 hour live letter where they go in detail about the job changes, is that the systems are changing. So don't, we're applying, Stormblood battle system logic to these jobs, and that might be a stretch. I would advise against doing that, because that's not necessarily the way it's going to work out. So just keep that in mind. But Hip, I I love the comment. I love the name. Thank you guys. Thank you so much for the comment. And let's go ahead and dive into GG. Writes, yeah, I'm no longer excited for the expansion. I won't be pre-ordering anymore. I wanted male Viera and a healer. The other stuff is cool and all, but not enough to draw me back in. Oh well, I guess just losing my affiliation for Square Enix games. And that is a disappointment. I wonder and I question a couple things. If I could do a kind of a study on the population, I'd be interested to see, where do you fall in life? Are you are you married with kids? Are you married? Are you dating? Are you in school or something like that? And where do you fall in how the news hits you, right? Is it the fact that I'm excited that there is not a male VR, that is female only, because of my age and position in life, because I grew at 12, I really kind of grew into my own after college in the world of 12. I got that 2 or 3 years after I graduated school or something. I can't remember when it exactly came out, but I remember it was really, I was out of college and I was working, and it was so impactful. It was such a great story. I really connected with it. Is it that because I had that experience in my life that it's more of a nostalgic factor where I'm coming from? Is it, or maybe, maybe I'm completely wrong in that regard. So I'm just obviously we have different ways that we see and approach this information. And, I look at why am I excited and why are people disappointed? And I'm not trying to discount that people are disappointed whatsoever. I think it's legitimate that they are, because they had that expectation. I'm just trying to hopefully bring some joy and some context to the conversation. That's really all I'm trying to do here. So anyway, regarding no longer pre-ordering the game, that's perfectly fine. The only thing you're going to miss out is on the earring, which is really valuable, especially if you're trying to level. So the thing I would say is that give it some time. We've got 3 months. We've got a lot more information coming out. And not pre-ordering the game. Actually, I'm very pro not pre-ordering games. I think more often than not that actually works out in your favor. Sometimes it helps to kind of take a step away, go play some other games, and then just be able to come back and appreciate things. Sometimes we try to throw ourselves into this too hard, and it ends up hurting kind of our appreciation for everything that it is rather than everything that it is not. And I myself am guilty of this. I myself am definitely, have been critical of the game and will continue to be critical of the game, because, we shouldn't sit here and just love fest it and say that it can't do anything wrong. But in context to what they're doing and what they're showing is they're showing me anything is possible. And that, for me, is the most exciting thing above all, because it doesn't feel like a carbon copy. It does not feel like Stormblood. It does not feel like Heaven's Word. and it doesn't feel like ARR. Maybe it will. Maybe it drops and it's like, yep. And that will be ultimately, I think, a little bit frustrating. But at the end, I think that it seems fresh. It seems like they're taking risks. And these aren't dramatic risks. These aren't risks that, for most people, in my mind, maybe in my opinion is wrong here, that is going to really force them to unsub. Like, maybe that's your initial reaction. And if you unsub and you stay unsub for a while, let's say, let me know. Like, if that is your path, that's what I want to know from you guys. And there's no judgment. Like, if you feel that it's the right to unsub, then yeah, you should do that. You should totally do that. But if you're not feeling excited, if you're feeling a little deflated, yeah, don't pre-order the game. I think that's the best mental health exercise that you can take right now when it comes to this kind of stuff. So Gigi, thank you so much for the comment. And we have Mr. Aracena and Penny Play writing, a little disappointed that the dancer isn't a healer, but Penny loves the animations of the Viera dancer that they showed, and they're already planning on switching to that job when it becomes available. Myself, I'm not too excited about Hrothgar, was hoping for Mel Viera, but I'm hoping that they'll introduce a 4th healer to balance out the 4th tank in a later patch, similar how Ninja was introduced in patch 2.x cycle and then Blue in the 4.x cycle. Regardless, we're excited, the new trailer and the reveals. Yeah, there's a lot here, the story itself, what they just showed us about shard hopping is amazing, right? Because we were like, are we going into Garlemald? No. Maybe we will at some point, or who knows how this is gonna balance out. What's it all gonna do with the story? So much so. And I think this is a pretty good comment in regards to kind of the mindset. It's fine to be disappointed. It's fine to see this and be like, wow, that's really not what I was hoping for. But I think if anything else, what they have shown us, what they're hinting at, they introduced Ninja in a patch. They said they never do it again. And then they did Blue Mage. Now we have the limited system. And while you might not be a fan of that, perfectly understandable, it still means that they can do these things. They can really take these interesting creative risks. And I think in the end, that is really delightful, because the fact is that the game isn't going to be locked in stone on the day it launches, right? That's the point. That's one of the reasons I think why people are drawn to these kind of games, because even though change can be scary, it doesn't mean that it is set in stone and it's forever the way it is. So thank you, Penny. Thank you, Aracena and Penny Play, for that fantastic comment. Hopefully we all get to enjoy something when Shadowbringers launches here in a couple of months. And then our final comment comes from Tackleberry61 saying, great feed, guys. It will be fun to find out how the Crystal Tower ties into our world and theirs. Maybe the Alligans shards traveled and built a bunch of towers, and maybe they did. And that is really interesting, because if they did and they escaped the calamities that way as well, that in and of itself is interesting, fascinating, and boom, that could be really key, really critical to the whole piece. So that's what this is about. That's going to be mind-blowing, because we're getting dwarves. Oh, they were Lalafell the whole time. What? the amount of things and way that they can explore and change the game and twist it up and really play with the lore and really dive into these mysteries that we've been dealing with for such a long time, I'm personally very excited about. And when they said they were going to the first, that seems like epic sauce to me. And then we're and so when we see these worlds in this story and just them walking around, I am so thrilled to kind of dive into this real fantasy, real driven kind of experience to see, and especially as a 1.0 player, seeing the City of Rapture, kind of in the Crystarium coming into play. That is very, very exciting. I've often wanted to go there and see there, and it's good to see that it still exists in, obviously in a different way, more than what they kind of teased as well. Now, I'm going to read something to you guys real quick. This is not a comment to throw up on the screen, because this was just kind of shared with me, and this comes from Jacques Philippe regarding interior freedom. And when I'm bringing this up, because I think essentially it's really important to see, as we talk about the acceptance curve, and I think this was really true. So we're reading about this today, and I thought it was interesting, and so hopefully you find it interesting. So I'm going to read you guys what he writes here, and hopefully you stick around, because maybe this will be good for everybody. So he says, the highest and most fruitful form of human freedom is found in accepting even more than in dominating. We show our greatness of our freedom when we transform reality, but still more when we accept it trustingly as it is given to us day after day. It is natural and easy to go along with pleasant situations that arise without our choosing them. It becomes a problem, obviously, when things are unpleasant, go against us, or make us suffer. But it is precisely then that in order to become truly free that we are often called to choose to accept what we did not want, and even what we would not have wanted at any price. There is a paradoxical law of human life here. One cannot be truly free unless one accepts not always being free. To achieve true interior freedom, we must train ourselves to accept peacefully and willingly plenty of things that seem to contradict our freedom. This means consenting to our personal limitations, our weaknesses, and our powerlessness. This is that situation in life that imposes on us, and so on. We find it difficult to do this because we feel a natural revulsion for situations we cannot control. But the fact is that these situations that really make us grow are precisely those we cannot control. And what he's talking about is when we talk about interior freedom isn't, when we talk about exterior freedom, the ability to move your arms, go, places where you want. Interior freedom is not being controlled like by drugs, by addictions and things of that nature. So how do we manage that? If we cannot control the situation, I'm not saying not to voice our disappointment, but to control our emotions, to control ourselves, to be free from that volatility that goes within us. We cannot make Yoshi P do what we want. Like, we aren't the developers, he is. We can communicate. That's what we have the power to do, but we don't have the power to make him do what we want. And that is where the frustration and the friction comes in. So what he's talking about here when we talk about that true interior freedom is that ability to sit here and accept it, again, back to the acceptance curve, so that we can not let it ruin our day and our weekend and our lives and be miserable and frustrated. Not that we can't be disappointed and we can't not communicate it. That's different, exterior freedom. But the interior freedom, not letting it dominate who we are and who we want to be. Anyway, guys, for Work to Game, my name's Ryan. Thank you so much for watching this video. Thanks for sticking around if you did. Hopefully you liked that quote from Jacques. I'll see if I can't find it somewhere. But yeah, like I said, if you like this video, be sure to hit that like button. I really, really try to do these community feedbacks. These are the most important part of what we do. And unfortunately, I just have not had the opportunity to do as much as I like. Welcome again to our new subscribers. Thank you again so much for watching it. I wish you guys all the very best, and we'll be sure to talk more with you guys about Shadowbringers and all things related to video games and the industry itself. Like I said, this is Work to Game. My name is Brian. Thank you so much for watching, and have a fantastic day. Take care. Hey, it's me. It's been a while since I talked to you guys directly this way, but don't tell anybody. We've got even more epic content planned for this channel. The response has been incredible. We hope to see you. If you're new, hit subscribe, leave us a comment. I'd like to talk to you more about video games. I can't seem to speak my language. All right.